All right, episode 3, Fighter and the Rider. Sergio Mora, Chris Mannix. He's the fighter. I'm the rider. And just learned very recently that Sergio Mora is now listening to podcasts. Is that right? You're now a podcast consumer?
I am. Long drives have turned me into a podcast listener because I like learning while I'm stuck in this LA traffic instead of listening to the same songs over and over and over that I memorized. I know all the songs by now. So I like to listen and get educated by women talking about relationships to help me with mine. And then, of course, Scott Galloway. I'm a big fan of politics.
How is it that you were listening to Scott Galloway? How does that happen?
Well, because I like reading, like writing, I like learning. I like a lot of things outside of boxing. That's the reason I'm here, man. That's the reason I'm still around. I know more than boxing. I know how to articulate myself. And I listening to podcasts.
You know how to what yourself? Okay. So basically, you go from Scott Galloway to call her daddy. Is
yeah, something like that. Is that a call her daddy? Is that a rule?
It's an actual podcast.
Let me put it in my podcast.
Okay. All right. Well, he's doing that. We're going to spend a lot of time on this show talking about the big fight this weekend. Chris Eubank Jr., Conor Benn finally going to face off. We're going to unpack that from start to finish. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the Jake Paul, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight. Been hearing a lot of backlash, continued backlash about Jake Paul's decision to fight Chavez Jr. And a fight card in mid-July, Sergio, is starting to shape up, but it looks like Edgar Berlanga and Hamza Shiraz are going to be at the top of that bill. We're going to get to that as well. But let's start by talking about the fight that has been over 3 years in the making. Chris Eubank Jr., Conor Benn, middleweight fight. No title on the line, but this is proof positive and evidence of why no title actually matters in a situation like this. These two men have generational history. Their fathers fought a couple of times back in the 90s. And these two were scheduled to fight in 2022 before that fight was scrapped after Conor Benn tested positive for a banned substance. Fast forward 2.5 years, and here we are, ready to go with Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. Is this as big a fight as the promoters are making it out to be? Because every interview I've heard Eddie Hearn give, Ben Shalom, anybody involved with this fight, call it one of the biggest fights in British boxing history.
Of course it is. It's already sold out, isn't it?
65,000 plus.
65,000 and no title on the line between two names that are very familiar. That's what happens when you bring legacy in the mix. Whenever you bring two guys that hate each other, it's a marketable, promotable fight. It promotes itself, and they're the opposite of each other. You have this classy guy in Eubank Jr. that doesn't really talk. He's like his father, but they could fight, and he's been around a long time, Eubank. And when it comes to Conor Benn, he comes from legacy as well. But he's more of the angry guy. He's more of he's the one that brings the anger. So it's two completely different personalities and two completely different fighters. That's how you market things. That's how you package it and market it, promote it. And they're promoting it themselves.
Yeah.
So who doesn't like the fact that Eubank, who's the reserved, soft-spoken guy, but he's very regal.
Is that your best British accent?
I tried.
Okay.
And then he smacks him in the face with an egg.
You hated that at the time. I loved it. I thought it was great.
I hated it at the time because I'm a fan of classy stare downs. I'm not a fan of all that bullshit that goes on with pushing each other, trying to slap each other, risking the fight. I don't like that.
It doesn't risk the fight, though. Like an egg up the face. Like I kept hearing all this stuff about, like, what if it got into his eye? Oh, okay. He didn't hit him with a glass pitcher, right? He hit him with an egg. Let's be real about that.
No. But there
was no danger of the fight.
There was symbolism to that egg, Chris Mannix.
Of course there was. Conor Benn says that it was a tainted egg, or tainted eggs that caused his positive test for clomiphene. That's why Chris Eubank Jr. slapped him in the face with the egg.
That's
Sergio,
the poetry behind all this.
It is. But you say you hate that kind of stuff. The fact is, it always works. Like, we remember Bernard Hopkins, throwing the Puerto Rican flag down on the ground and stomping on it.
Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis.
Mike Tyson bites Lennox Lewis's ankle in their press event. These things, even if they get downplayed by the British Boxing Board of Control and the state commissions here in the U.S., they work. They help sell a fight, and there's no doubt that incident probably sold 5,000-10,000 more tickets and probably will lead to 5,000-10,000 more pay-per-views or more.
Yeah. And I think the king of that was Ricardo Mayorga. Every time Mayorga was the B-side of a fight, there was always some brawls. But people watched. And Mayorga wasn't a great fighter. He was always in pay-per-views. So I agree with you. This is going to be a massive hit, especially across the pond. But I got to give it to Conor Benn because he's only had 2 fights, through this entire thing. But he was banned from the UK. And it seems like for him to stay busy and keep doing what he's doing and get the paychecks and stay relevant, he has to be hated. He's despised the more that he tries to work. And now he has to go back, to the UK and fight. He's going to be the hated one. Before, I would think it was Eubank Jr. that was the one that was despised. But the prodigal son returns, and he's going to return to a bunch of criticism, hate, and boos.
It's definitely, the fight has definitely changed a lot from what it was back in 2022. And Conor Benn's positive test is part of that. Chris Eubank's demeanor during the last couple of months is part of that. I mean, Chris Eubank Jr. leans all the way into being the bad guy. Like, he is the perfect bad guy because he's well-spoken and he has a great delivery with how he delivers his insults. Like, he has been so condescending towards everyone on Team Benn, from Conor to Nigel to Eddie Hearn. Like, he has been talking to them like they are lesser people. Like, he has been doing that for a couple of months now. And it's effective. It's effective. This fight is bigger than what it was in 2022. And some will say that's not a good thing because the reason we didn't get the fight in 2022 is because Conor Benn tested positive for a banned substance. And look, Eddie Hearn, Conor Benn, people around him, they always keep running around saying Conor's been cleared. Not really. Like, he's allowed to fight, and he's cleared to fight. But he still has that positive test on his resume, and that's always going to be there. But it's bigger. Like, it's bigger. 65,000 in Tottenham for this fight. No title on the line. 160 pounds. It's a bigger event than what it was 2.5 years ago.
It was, and there's more fuel to the criticism fire, too, because Conor Benn was coming off some of the most vicious knockouts that went all over the place, and all of a sudden he fought 2 guys in the States and couldn't get him out. They both went the distance. And, his haters would say, well, that's because he's not eating those loaded eggs anymore. So there's a lot of things that you can, pull from this and make it more dramatic.
I don't think it's hating either, Sergio, to say that, to wonder if his power disappeared for a reason. I don't think that's hating because the fact is he has fought twice since his move up from welterweight. He fought Peter Dobson, who's an okay fighter, went the distance with him. He fought Rodolfo Orozco, who, for the record, was on the juice himself when he fought Conor Benn, tested positive after that fight, but he didn't come close to knocking out either one of those guys. So I think that, just saying, hey, he hasn't had the power that he showed at 147 is a reasonable thing to say.
Not only the power, but if you look at his muscle definition, he used to post, well, he still does, but
he's still a jacked guy.
He's still a jacked guy, but now it's a leaner jack. It's more of a finely tuned, leaner, dense muscle. Before he was kind of real bulkier, real muscly. A lot of fighters that get caught, and I'm not going to name them, but if you can notice the definition in the arms, the biceps, the shoulders, that's where you could see the difference. But before they got caught and then after they got caught, their muscle got leaner and they're not as round and bulky anymore.
Yeah. No issues regarding drugs going into this fight. Both these guys have been rigorously tested, and that's great for them and great for boxing. Before we get into the fight itself, I do want to talk about the likely absence of someone on fight night. That's going to be Chris Eubank Sr. We know that the relationship between Nigel Benn and Conor Benn is rock solid. Nigel has been and will continue to be in Conor Benn's camp, around him, supporting him, publicly, privately, all that. He is in lockstep with his son. Chris Eubank Sr. is not, and he has not been around during this promotion. He was not around for the opening press conference. He was not around for the egg slapping incident. I was told over the last couple of months that there was back channeling being done to try to get Chris Eubank Sr. there on fight night. But all the indications are now, Sergio, that Eubank is not going to be there. He did an interview recently where he called this fight, quote, nonsense and a circus. He says it will be a, quote, daylight murder. And then he says, quote, this is a disgrace. And if you don't think this is a disgrace, fight me. I said it, and all you need to say it, fight me. This is a disgrace. Strong words from Chris Eubank Sr. Do you think that's going to be an issue for Junior on fight night? All the stuff going on with his father going into this fight.
Absolutely. And as long as you've been working with me, 7 years now, we've called plenty of juniors in boxing. I tell you all the time, I'm not a big fan of father-son relationships, trainer, boxer. You know, when it's too close to the family circle, especially when they carry your name. Look at all the juniors. Roy Jones Jr., bad relationship with his father. Floyd Mayweather Jr., bad relationship with his father. There's something about a senior and a junior that you want to pass on all the greatness, that's if they were great, onto your son. They don't become men themselves. I love the fact that Chris Eubank Jr. is the one starting this, and starting all this. But notice that Conor Benn and Nigel Benn, one, they don't have that same junior title, but they're not reacting like as they should. I love the fact that this is happening because it adds more drama, man. It adds more ticket sales, and it's a good look for the whole promotion. I'm not a fan of juniors, man. I say it all the time. So sorry to all the juniors that are boxers, but
you're not a fan of juniors in general?
No junior. I don't think any junior is gonna either. They don't grow up to be themselves, man. They have big shoes to fill from the father, and
especially when your father is Chris Eubank Sr., who is a decorated boxer, one of the most popular guys in at least recent British boxing history, who fought 2 terrific fights against Nigel Benn. I think that Chris Eubank Jr. is mentally tough enough to compartmentalize this. I think he's been around a long time. Nothing I've seen from him in his interviews suggests that he is rattled by anything that his father has said or is distracted by his non-presence. In fact, sometimes in situations like this, if the father and the son are not on the same page and the father's there just because he's supposed to be there, it can go badly for him. And I bring up Tim Tszyu as an example. I mean, Tim Tszyu has said that when he lost to Bakram Murtsalayev, what was going on during that fight week and during the fight itself was that his father, Kostya, was there. And his father had not been around for a lot of his fights. So Tim Tszyu said it kind of threw me off a little bit. Now, that may be excuse making, whatever you want to think of it. But I think there's something potentially to that. Chris Eubank Jr. Is, his father's been around, but he's not. It's not unusual for him to go into a fight and have his father not sitting there watching him. I think after all this, for his father to be there might turn out to be more of a negative to him than a positive. But I want to talk about the fight itself, right? Because I think takes for this are all over the place. Predictions on this fight are all over the place. I want to preface I'm going to give you my prediction here, but I want to preface it by saying that I'm a big fan of Conor Benn's talent. I think Conor Benn is a future welterweight world champion. I think that his rise in the welterweight division was legit. I don't think that it was just, as some have suggested, kind of PED fueled. I think he is a legit talent with an aggressive style, a good boxer. I think he can be a title holder at 147. But this, to me, feels like a bridge too far for a couple of reasons. One, I think size matters in boxing. And in this fight, it is going to be at a full 160 pound. That is Chris Eubank Jr.'s fighting weight. He has fought his last 4 fights at 160. He looked great his last 2 fights at 160, avenging the loss to Liam Smith with a knockout and beating the bag out of Kamil Zarameta over in Saudi Arabia. So this is his weight. People have talked about the rehydration clause. That's not that big a deal to me. Like a lot of times you have to deal with the IBF. You have to deal with a 10-pound rehydration clause. Like, he'll deal with it. I think he'll be fine on fight night. And I think when you see these two guys squaring off in the middle of the ring, and you talk about this a lot. You talked about it recently with Boots Ennis and Amantas Stanionis. When these guys rehydrate, there's going to be a pretty big size difference between these two when they get into the ring. I also think that Chris Eubank Jr. has done a fantastic job of making this personal for Conor Benn. Like, when you see these two guys in interviews, whether it's on Piers Morgan, at press conferences during this fight week, like, who's the one that looks pissed off? It's Conor Benn.
The younger one.
Like, it's
the
Conor
young
Benn.
bull.
Like, Conor Benn, you can feel the animosity flowing from Conor Benn. Meanwhile, Chris Eubank Jr. is kind of little brothering him, being like, it's good that you're here, man. Like, remember the first fight when he wore that 60% t-shirt? When he said he was only going to be 60% because Conor's making him squeeze down to 157? Like, that's how Chris Eubank Jr. gets into your head. And I think he's all up inside the head of Conor Benn. I think Conor's going to have a great career. No matter what happens in this fight, I think he's going to have a good career. I think if he can get back down to 147, I think he'd become a world champion. But I think this fight is all wrong for him, Sergio. In fact, I think Chris Eubank is going to catch him. I think in the second half of the fight, Chris Eubank is going to catch him and he's going to win by knockout.
Eubank has been the bigger fighter since the beginning of his career, 160 pounder. He's been a 168 pounder since 2017. He's fought nothing but champions at 168, from George Groves to Arthur Abraham. He was a big puncher, by the way. James DeGale. These are solid world champions at 168.
Billy Joe Saunders.
Well, he's a 160 pounder.
Still, but a big guy and a former world champion.
I'm talking about super middleweights here. Whenever you're dealing with that type of power at 168, a guy that's coming up from 147 is not going to harm you. I don't care how muscular he looks, how strong and determined, how angry he is, how much he brings to the table. Conor Benn is a much smaller fighter, and that's exactly what Eubank Sr. is touching on, the fact that, Junior's picking on a much smaller fighter. Their last name is making this fight good. The promotion is making this fight great. And the nostalgia that the old generation of fans want to see the young guys do this. And then, of course, they have the young generation that have been following them. There's a lot of things going on, but I love the mind games. And the fact that Chris Eubank Jr. has mastered that. He's a classy a classy troll. He's a professional at it. He knows how to use the right words, the right tone, where he's putting you down. Like you said, he's making him seem like he's below them. I would hate it. It would get to my skin if someone that, and he's a big dude, he's a tall, muscular guy, handsome, and then all of a sudden he comes with that British accent.
Would you stop trying to do...
Man, that is so demeaning.
You sound like Mr. Belvedere.
Well, I'm just trying. I'm
Okay.
trying.
Right.
But it would make me more angry coming from that accent, and it just seems like it's very king-like, and he's making me out to be like a peasant or a servant. But I love the fact that he's bringing that old bull mentality, because that's what he's going to need. He has the better experience, the championship experience over Conor Benn. He's the better outside fighter than Conor Benn, and I would think he's a bigger puncher as well. So he has all three of those coming to the table, and that's the reason I think I'm with you. Eubank is going to be a little bit too much. Still going to be a great fight. It's gonna sell. I'm going to be watching, but I think Eubank Jr. is going to have his number.
The other thing about Conor Benn is that we have yet to see him in with a puncher. I wouldn't describe Eubank as a pure puncher, but he does have power. We saw it against Liam Smith. We saw it against Camille Zarameta. Like, he can crack. And at that weight, his natural weight, he's going to have more power than Conor Benn. Conor, up until this point, because he was a prospect and one without a deep amateur background, he was match made pretty carefully. If you look at some of the guys he fought at 147, Adrian Granados, Chris Algieri, Samuel Vargas, like good fighters, but not guys that have great power. So we haven't seen Conor Benn's chin tested. Peter Dobson in that fight that I think was at 150, not a huge puncher. Rodolfo Orozco was a big guy, but he wasn't a huge puncher either. Like, he has been pretty carefully matched up until this point in his career. And this is a sink or swim moment. He's going up against a guy that I think has real power at 160. And I can see, when we get to the second half of the fight, when it becomes, when the kind of that energy wears off of Conor Benn, that adrenaline wears off, and it becomes more of a classic boxing match, that's when I think Chris Eubank Jr. can catch him. I think Chris has got some tricks. An uppercut, a very good right hand.
That's his best punch.
Yeah,
by the way,
I think he's got some tricks that are going to be problematic for Conor Benn.
There is some positives on Conor Benn's side. The fact that a big guy, a natural super middleweight like Chris Eubank, was knocked out by a junior middleweight in Liam Smith. So that right there, that gives you some kind of, this guy can't take a punch. I could back him up. I could get on the inside once I have him against the ropes. So there is a ray of sunshine there for Conor Benn, because I think Conor Benn is he's not a better inside fighter, but he's a stronger inside fighter than Smith. And I think he's a bigger one-punch knockout puncher than Smith. And if you can catch Conor Benn, Eubank, like I said, against the ropes or on the inside, we know that he can get hurt. So there is a ray of sunshine there for Benn. That's the reason there's interest and intrigue from all of us, but we know who the favorite will be.
Yeah. My take is, if Conor Benn can catch him in the first 4 rounds, that's how he's going to win. If this goes to the second half of the fight, he's not going to win.
I think it's opposite.
Really?
I think it's opposite. I think it's better for Ben on the second half of the fight, because that's where the the age kicks in for Eubank. You know, all that wear and tear from all that long career, and he's in his mid-30s already. He's what, 36,
I do
37?
think Eubank is more durable than people give him credit for.
When
people,
he's in control of
right.
fights, Mannix.
Well, people look back at the Liam Smith fight and how he got knocked out in that fight, and look at like, oh my God, Liam Smith, 154-pounder, he knocks Chris Eubank out. That was bad, but I do think that all the stuff that happened with Conor before then played a role in that. Like Chris Eubank was preparing for Conor Benn. The whole stuff happens. The fight almost happens. Then months later, he's back in the ring fighting Liam Smith. I don't think he was all the way right in the head. Now, you fast forward a year, he comes back. Yeah, Liam Smith got hurt in that fight, the rematch, or was hurt. He dominated that one. And that I think was more of the Chris Eubank that we're likely to see. Camille Zarametta long since washed, but Eubank dominated that fight as well. I think Eubank's got a good chin. I think he'll hold up to the earlier assault. I think he'll take some shots, but I think he'll stand up to him. And I think he'll catch Conor with that right hand. Whether it's uppercut or a straight right, I think he catches him in the second half of the fight.
That's a good point. The fact that he came back and I think he knocked him out.
He knocked out Liam Smith.
Yeah, the fact that he came back and got revenge like that and didn't struggle the second time around. He pulled a Roy Jones Jr. when Montel Griffin beat him. What did Roy Jones come back? Knocked him out in the first round and made an example out of him. That's what champions do. So that was a good look for Eubank. And maybe it was an off night. And there's another piece that adds intrigue to this promotion.
All right, let's talk about Jake Paul. We discussed on the Monday episode, and I got a lot of pushback from people, Sergio, after we talked about Jake and his decision to fight Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Both you and I are of the opinion that this is a good fight for Jake Paul. People responded, whether it was on YouTube, direct messaged on social media, lots of ways you can comment nowadays. Everybody's kind of pointing to what Chavez is now. He's 39 years old. He won the fight last year, but it was against a guy in Uriah Hall who's only 1-0. Before that, he had a long layoff. Before that, he lost Anderson Silva. Chavez really hasn't been a relevant fighter since 2019 when he went into that fight against Daniel Jacobs at 175, wound up quitting on a stool that night. So people saying that are pushing back are saying, you're saying Chavez is a good fight. He hasn't been a good fighter in 6 years, at least. Maybe even longer than that.
I'm going to say longer, but I'm waiting till you're done.
No, I'm done. But I guess the question is, are they right? Is Chavez, are we overrating Chavez as an opponent?
They're absolutely right. Chavez Jr., let's emphasize the junior, man, because that's such a great name. You know, Julio Cesar Chavez. You just said
you hate juniors.
And here it is. I'm emphasizing it. Junior, you know, he's bringing down the legacy of the great Campeón Mexicano. But look, since 2017, when he was beaten from pillar to post, Canelo wiped them out. Yeah. He didn't even come to fight. He came to collect a paycheck. That's it. On a big Mexican holiday, packed arena. I was there. It was an embarrassment. It was a one-sided fight. Canelo put the beat down. And even from then, he was missing weight. He was not reliable.
Can I point out this real quick? You know how embarrassing that fight was? Canelo had Gennady Golovkin waiting. Like Chavez, that was a fight at 164 pounds. And Chavez was believed to be a legit contender. They thought so little of Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. that night that they had Gennady Golovkin waiting in the wings to do that, movie type moment where they're like, Golovkin, you're next. And then Golovkin, the music hits, and here comes Gennady coming out to set up the next fight. That's how little they thought of Chavez.
Look, another reason why I hate those junior names, because that name, what's that word? Nepotism?
Yes.
Nepo baby, just like you, by the way.
I'm not
Nepo baby. These guys are, you wouldn't think it exists in boxing, but they do. This man Chavez Jr. continues getting payday after payday. When he misses weight, he's an embarrassment to the sport. So to answer your question, he's been washed since 2017. What's that? 8 years now?
Yeah.
8 years this man has been washed, and he's still making huge paydays. I'm talking about multi-million-dollar paydays, and they continue bringing him back. He even quit. Look, Chavez has quit against Fonfara. He quit against Jacobs. He even quit against Cazares after the Jacobs fight with that little tiny cut where he went to the corner and he told the doctor to stop the fight with a little cut. This man is a born quitter. He's a natural quitter.
All right, so hold on. You're sounding like you're agreeing with the commentator. Like it was just 2 days ago that you said this was a good fight for Jake Paul.
For Jake Paul, because he doesn't want a tough fight. He wants a legitimate name. This is brilliant marketing. This is a brilliant matchmaking. Jake Paul, for as much shit as I give you, sorry if I can't cuss here, for as much stuff as I give you, you are brilliant at avoiding challenges, making a lot of money off of washed up fighters, and now you're going to have a former champion, a former legitimate middleweight champion on your resume, and he might stop Chavez because Chavez
Which
Jr.
would be a feather in his cap.
Chavez Jr. has that quit in him, and once you quit once, twice, 2.5, 3 times, you're bound to do it again. So yeah, man, it's brilliant for Jake Paul. I think it's a win-win-win-win for him, and it's a lose-lose-lose for Chavez Jr.
Well, lose until he gets that
Until he catches
paycheck
a
on Monday.
yeah.
That's where it's a win for him. I'm just going to repeat what I said on Monday because it bears repeating and worth repeating. Jake Paul is really a 2-1 boxer. That's what he is. He has 3 fights against guys that you would consider traditional boxers. He fought Tommy Fury, who is a traditional boxer to a degree. He fought Andre August, who had a glossy record. He fought Ryland Borland, who had a glossy record. These guys were not good, but they were traditional boxers. So he is effectively a 2-1 boxer taking on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Now, if you just stripped away the name Jake Paul and didn't know anything about the events that he's been a part of, the Tyron Woodley events, the Anderson Silva event, the Mike Tyson event. If you took all that away and just said, hey, we've got a 2-1 cruiserweight who is taking on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., nobody would blink at that. Nobody would have a problem with that. The only reason people are having a problem with that and saying, what is he doing? Why is he fighting this particular guy? Is because the name is Jake Paul. You can't look at Jake Paul and see him as this 25-0 cruiserweight contender. He's not. He is a 2-1 boxer taking on a guy who has a pedigree, who has been a former middleweight title holder. I'm not going to sit here and defend Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. as a dangerous opponent. He has shown nothing, 0 in the last 5 years plus to show that he is a dangerous opponent for any boxer with a proverbial pulse. But for Jake Paul, he's a reasonable opponent at this stage of his career.
I disagree with you. He's a circus act. This guy's one of those carnival barkers. He's a joke.
Who?
Jake Paul. And he's made a career being a joke by picking the right opponents. Now, here's the biggest joke. He's going to have a former champion on his resume that he might beat. And that's why it's a ha-ha joke that he's going to laugh all the way to the bank. That's the perfect way to do it.
Hold on. You keep...
First,
you
got
to keep it 100, though. You got to keep it consistent.
What do you think I'm doing?
No, because how many guys have, like, the name Chop Chop Corley on their resume?
Good fighter.
But, like, he's 50, and I think he fought recently. I'm just saying, it's not unusual.
He fought Floyd Mayweather Jr.
Right, but I'm saying they have him on his resume later when he was long since washed. To say they have a former champion on the resume. How many guys do that? It happens all the time. You get these faded former champions who are holding on for one last payday, fighting the young prospect who want to get that name in your resume. It is boxing 101. It is matchmaking 101. So what Jake Paul's doing is not like this crazy outside the box thing. He's just doing it on a bigger stage. He's a 2-1 boxer fighting on pay-per-view. Like that's the only difference between Jake fighting Chavez Jr. and somebody else who you'd never heard of fighting Chavez Jr.
Okay, what 2-1 boxer will get an opportunity against a popular name and a former champion if it wasn't a joke?
Yeah, it's not a joke.
Jake Paul type guy with a following.
With money. That's what it's all about. It's not about the following. I don't think Chavez Jr. wants Instagram followers. He wants the cash. If you have cash, you can get what you want in boxing.
So then why don't you don't call him a boxer. Say he's a privileged promoter that put himself in the boots of a boxer to finally make some money.
If he stops Chavez Jr., would you be impressed?
Absolutely.
Okay. See, you're just sort of talking in circles here now. Like, you either like it, you like it, you don't like it, you think it's a good fight, you think it's a joke. I don't even know where you're coming from.
Well, that's because that's the way I think. You know, I mean, you want me to bring out the good and the bad. That's what I'm doing. Ultimately, I hate it if I'm a fighter. But if I'm a Jake Paul fan, if I'm Jake Paul, I think, you know, it's brilliant. So what side do you want me to pick? It's brilliant if you're him. He's laughing all the way to the bank, making a killing fighting these older fighters. But I hate it because I'm a guy that bled. You know, I've been boxing since I was a kid. I'm a guy that's had an amateur record. I'm the one that had to fight in these small ballrooms when I was 1-0 and 2-0, getting paid $500 a fight. And then I see this, I want to cuss again. I want to see this
guy
blank make this much money fighting has been great names that aren't nowhere near their prime of their career, and they're still making a killing. Of course, I'm going to hate. So what side do you want me to pick? I'll debate either one.
Yeah, but I think if social media was around when you won the Contender, you probably would have gotten more opportunities faster than you deserve them back then. Because on the Contender, you won big fights, but you would have become a bigger star because of social media, because you have had a bigger following. You thought your last fight was 13 million people watching that fight against Peter Manfredo. You can't hate on him capitalizing on his popularity. Like, that's my whole thing. Like, he's managed to harness this popularity, push it into boxing, make money off it, and if that's what gets him big fights or bigger fights than he should be getting, I'm fine with that. I have no problem whatsoever with that.
Peter Manfredo Jr. There's another junior.
We're just gonna call this episode Juniors. All right, last thing for you. I want to talk about the recently announced matchup in New York. Sometime mid-July, we are going to get another big Ring Magazine card. Shakur Stevenson, Williams Zepeda, it's going to be on that. We've talked about that fight a lot over the last couple of months. But Edgar Berlanga is slated to be on it, probably going to be the headliner against Hamza Shiraz. Edgar Berlanga picked up a low-level win a couple of months ago in Orlando. He is also coming off that loss to Canelo Alvarez. Now he gets Hamza Shiraz, who not too long ago was viewed as the boogeyman of the 160-pound division. His last fight does not look good against Carlos Adames. Lucky to escape with a draw. What do you think of Berlanga against Shiraz?
I'm glad that Berlanga's fighting a tough fight, because he was just looking for that mega payday, and he was avoiding the Caleb Plants. He was avoiding Christian Mbili. He was avoiding Diego Pacheco. He didn't even want to look their way. Yes, he would say their name, but when it came down to it, he's not fighting them. He's looking for another cash out payday, and he's not going to find it. So I'm glad that he finally. This is going to be a tough fight. Shiraz is coming off a bad performance. Luckily, he didn't get that loss, so he can still claim he's undefeated. So it's a good look for Berlanga, and it's a great look for Shiraz, who's going to have probably the best camp he's ever had, because now he knows it's make or break for him. He looked like a killer coming up. I sized up Shiraz the first time I seen him. I can't believe this man's a 160-pounder. I've been 160 my whole life. This guy makes me look like I'm a welterweight. He's tall, he's big, he's huge. He was a puncher.
It was incredible.
He looked like the next coming of something special. And then Carlos Adames came, and Adames is a hell of a champion. So Berlanga's going to have his hands full with Shiraz. Berlanga's going to have his hands full. So this is going to be a great test for Berlanga to see exactly what we have, because everyone looks at the Canelo payday and saying, oh, well, he didn't get knocked out, and that's going to be his feather in his cap. That wasn't a feather in his cap. That just put a lot of money in his pocket. Berlanga still has a lot to prove to a lot of people. So I think this is the way to prove it to a lot of people. He avoided those other three names that I mentioned on the championship level. This is a good fourth name on here, because Shiraz, it's going to be a tough fight, man. And he might be the smaller fighter when they size up.
I agree. It was incredible to me that Shiraz was making 160 for as long as he did. He is a huge middleweight, probably the biggest middleweight that I've ever seen. I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess if and when Sebastian Fundora goes to middleweight, he'll be the biggest middleweight that I've ever seen. But Hamza Shiraz not only was tall, but he was thick. Like, you just looking at him, like, how the hell do you get to 160 pounds? But he did it pretty regularly. This would have been maybe a bigger fight had the Adames draw not happened. If Shiraz just decided after the wins over Ammo Williams and Tyler Denny that he was just too big for 160 and he was going to move up, then I think this would be a huge fight. It's still pretty big, but I can't get that Adames performance out of my mind, right? Like, Adames, to your point, is a good fighter, but I'm not going to sit here and say Adames is Tommy Hearns. He is a 30-something-year-old blown up 154 who, is good. He's a good fighter, but not a great fighter. And Shiraz, what I noticed in that fight was that Shiraz does not like to get hit. Like, he is reluctant to let his right hand go when he knows there's something big coming back. And that's something Edgar Berlanga still has. He still has that right hand in the holster, and he can still hurt you with it. So, I don't know, like, did your opinion on Shiraz change after the draw against Adames?
Yes, it did. Leading up to that fight, I was saying this is all going to come down to how does Shiraz take a punch. And we got to see how he took a punch, and he didn't even take a real big one. He just doesn't. There's an art to getting punched. There's an art to being hurt. believe it or not, you got to know how to react when you're hurt. You can't show it. You got to hide it. That's when your acting skills come. Every fighter, every champion especially, knows how to hide when they're hurt. They slow down their pace. They clench. They take a knee. They react the proper way. What they don't do is start moving when you're not a mover and start, being afraid of every single punch that's thrown your way. You got to relax when you're hurt. That comes with experience. That comes with things that you picked up in the gym. When you're hurt, when you get rocked with those big 16-ounce gloves and the big headgear and your head's buzzing, the ants are coming all over your body. That's when you got to slow things down in sparring. That's where you pick up character, man. That's where you're like, all right, I know how to handle this. It's going to go away in like 15, 20 seconds. Push them away, move around the ring, smile at them. That's all acting. You pick that up in the gym. Shiraz hasn't picked that up his entire amateur career and in the ring because he didn't react the right way. Hopefully, this is a learning experience and he knows how to react the second time it happens, because it's going to happen a second, third, and fourth time. Let's just hope that, next time he gets hurt, he's not peeling himself off the canvas, because that's another thing that you have to learn how to react to. And another thing after that is getting cut. There's so many things that you learn on the job in professional boxing that you don't learn in the gym, but you have to be ready for that moment when it comes. Shiraz failed the first time. I think he'll be ready the second time.
You know who's going to teach him that? Andy Lee. Now his new trainer as well.
There
Andy
you
Lee picked up the pieces of Ben Whitaker. Ben Whitaker had a good performance. Now he's got Hamza Shiraz. He does have a lot to work with. Like, Shiraz is a skilled guy. When we've seen him at his best, he's shown a good jab. He's shown good power. He obviously has kind of the mindset, like he's very tunnel vision about his fights. But I agree with you. Like, he's got to learn some things that are going to make him successful on a championship level. And one of them is dealing with getting hit, being willing to exchange, throw with your opponent. Let's think about Berlanga. Like, Berlanga, in the second half of that Canelo fight, he was throwing with Canelo. Like, we can say that Canelo's not what he used to be, but Edgar Berlanga was trading leather with Canelo in the second half of that fight. So that tells me that Edgar Berlanga is going to be willing to throw with Hamza Shiraz. Does Shiraz have that same mindset? Is he the same talent at 168 that he was at 160? It's a fascinating fight to me between these two guys. And the winner, right there in line for a big fight at 160. I think it's a good fight. Like, sure, like Edgar Berlanga, if nothing else, has shown that he is a tremendous prize fighter. Right? Like, him and his team have masterfully negotiated him. Your boy Keith Conley masterfully negotiated him from one contract to another. Got him a lot of money at Top Rank. Got him a lot of money at Matchroom. Got him a lot of money for Canelo, and now probably going to collect a lot of money to fight Hamza Shiraz somewhere in New York in midsummer.
I was about to bring up Keith Conley. Yeah, man. I mean, Berlanga's probably going to be another fighter that will probably never win a world championship. And I'm just saying, just like I say it all the time with Ryan Garcia, the most popular, well-paid fighters that hasn't picked up a world title. Berlanga's on the same boat, making a killing, making tens of millions already. Well, in that Canelo fight, at least. Crazy.
You know why he probably won't win a world title?
Because he keeps getting paid and enjoying it and taking victory laps and a loss in Puerto Rico. I don't know.
No, that's not why. It's because he's a junior.
Is he really? Edgar Berlanga's a junior? I rest my case.